In 1957, at a summer camp in Colorado, a girl named Hope uses a payphone. She tells the person on the line that she got the phone number from her weird dreams. When she asks who's speaking, all she hears is loud static, so she quickly hangs up. In 1982, in Denver, a boy named Finney is punching a boy at school who is begging him to stop. He only stops when his sister Gwen shouts at him. Gwen asks why he did it, and Finney lies that the other boy started the fight. Here we find out that everyone thinks that Finney is a brave guy who killed a serial killer 4 years ago. While they are walking, a boy named Ernesto came over and asked Gwen to a concert, and she happily said yes. That night, Finney can't get to sleep, so he goes outside to smoke and keeps seeing the grabber in his mind. After a while, Gwen comes out too, notices Finney looks wrecked, so she tries to talk, but Finney refuses to talk about what's bothering him. Back at Camp Alpine Lake, Felix arrives there with a group of kids, all excited to have fun. But things got scary fast when the grabber started chasing him through the woods. Felix tripped and fell, and the grabber caught him, stabbing and cutting him open. After that, Felix's body is dumped into the lake, but right before he died, he managed to scratch the letter W into the ice. Right then, Gwen wakes up, revealing it was a terrifying dream she just had. She also heard the phone ringing and went to check, but instead of answering, she opened the front door and noticed something weird across the street. Before she can figure it out, Finney wakes her up and tells her she's been sleepwalking. Gwen tried to tell him about her bad dream, but Finney didn't want to listen and just told her to go back to sleep. The next day at school, Gwen was in the library researching supernatural topics when a mean girl starts teasing her and calling her a witch. Later, Ernesto came with the concert tickets and says he actually thinks it's cool that she's into spooky stuff. He even shows her some tarot cards his grandma sells and said he knew that her dreams had helped the police find the grabber's victims' bodies. That made Gwen feel weird, but Ernesto said he likes weird. Meanwhile, Finney left a store and heard a payphone ringing as he walked. He answered it, said, "Sorry, I can't help you," then hung up and walked away. Back at Camp Alpine Lake, a boy named Cal is having great time, but one night in the forest, the grabber chases him, catches him easily, and kills him by cutting his body into pieces. Some parts are burned, the rest dumped in the lake. As Cal dies, his ghost scratches the letter B into the ice. At that moment, Gwen was awakened by the phone ringing, showing that it was another nightmare. She then steps outside and sees Cal's body lying on the yard. Confused, she gets on her bicycle and rides straight to the grabber's old empty house. There she entered the basement through a small window and found a black phone inside. When she answers it, she hears Hope's voice from the past and realized that Hope used to have the same kind of dreams she does, except Hope saw numbers instead of letters. Gwen tries to learn more, but the phone call fills with static and then disconnects. Gwen spins around and freezes to see the ghost of the grabber's brother. He warns her to leave. At that moment, the basement door opens. Footsteps come down the stairs. Gwen is terrified, but it's Finney who was looking for her. Gwen tells him she spoke to Hope and that Hope was their mother. Finney doesn't believe on it. He thinks it was just another dream, and they leave together. The next morning, Gwen shows Finney an old brochure of Camp Alpine Lake and begs to go there to investigate. Finney says no. Their dad, Terrence, overheard the conversation and tells them their mom worked there when she was a teenager. He tells them the camp shut down in 1958 and he hates religious camps anyway. Afterward, Ernesto arrives in car to take Gwen to the camp. Finney doesn't trust Ernesto, so he came along. After driving for hours, they reached a snowy area where they saw car wrecks on the side of the road. The snowfall becomes so heavy that they can't see the road ahead. Finney tells Ernesto to stop the car. He says he'll run ahead on foot and they should follow him in car. After a while, a girl named Mustang finds them and guides them toward the camp. When they arrive at the camp, they meet Mustang's uncle, Armando, who also runs the place. On the way to the cabins, he explains that no kids will be coming because the roads won't be cleared until the storm is over. Then Gwen is sent to the girls' dorm, while Finney and Ernesto go to the boys' dorm. Later, Gwen falls asleep and dreams of another victim of grabber named Spike, who played drums in the band. Before he dies, he scratches the letter H in the ice. Right then, she wakes up and looks in the window, but then falls asleep again. Meanwhile, Finney is outside smoking when he hears the payphone ringing. He walks toward it, but it stopped. When he turns to leave, it starts again. This time he reaches and answers it, saying, "I can't help you," then hangs up. But the phone rings once more. He tries to leave, but the sound gets louder. So he answers again and hears only static. Then the grabber's voice say, "Hello, Finney." Scared, Finney slams the phone down. Just then, the phone booth door slams shut. He kicks it hard, but it won't open. The phone rings again. In fury, he kicks it, and the handset falls off. Then the grabber's voice speaks once more, saying that hell isn't made of flames, it's made of ice, because nothing burns like the cold. Back in girls' dorm, Gwen woke up and heard a scraping noise coming from under the bed next to hers. She gathers her courage, looks under the bed, and sees the dead boy Felix staring at her. So she jumps away in horror, but Cal's ghostly cold hand grabs her arm and burns her skin. Scared, Gwen tries to back away as both boys move toward her. Spike appears at the window and opened it. Suddenly, another figure behind him smashes the window, causing the glass to fall and slice Spike's face in half. Seeing this, Gwen screams in terror. At that exact moment, the locked phone booth door swings open. Finney hears Gwen scream and rushes to the girls' dorm. There, he finds her shaking and crying and saying she's losing her mind. He hugs her and calms her down. Then he takes her with him to the boys' dorm. There, she lies down in bed with Ernesto, but she still can't sleep and quietly prays to God to keep the nightmares away. The next day, Finney gets angry at Gwen for telling Ernesto everything, but Gwen insists they need help, and to prove it, she shows him the burn mark on her arm, saying the nightmares are hurting her for real. Right then, Armando shows up and invites them to eat breakfast. At breakfast, Armando gets angry at Gwen for sleeping in the boys' dorm. He then asks why they came in the camp, so Gwen shows him an old photo of her mother Hope. Armando instantly recognizes her as a counselor. When they tell him she took her own life 7 years ago, he is deeply shaken. After that, he tells them to call their families to say they're safe and gives them permission to use the office phone. But Finney mentions the payphone outside that keeps ringing. Armando looks confused and says that phone has been dead for over 10 years. After Armando walks away, Finney tells Gwen and Ernesto that the payphone rang last night and he heard the grabber's voice. Just then, the phone starts ringing again. So Finney says to Gwen and Ernesto to call the dad, while he rushes to answer the phone and hears static. Then a boy's voice says it's cold and that they shouldn't be at the camp. Suddenly, the 3 ghost boys appear around the booth, invisible to Finney, and Finney keeps asking questions, but the boys barely remember anything. Then they start pounding on the booth, and they only vanish when Finney hangs up the phone. Later, Gwen calls Terrence to let him know they're okay. Even so, he's still worried because of the snowstorm. So he contacts a friend to borrow a snowplow. After the call, Gwen and Ernesto ask staff members Barbara and Kenneth if the camp has any old records or history books. Kenneth kindly says they only have brochures, but Barbara snaps at them, calling Gwen shameless for sleeping in the boys' dorm. When they mention the 3 boys who died at the camp long ago, Barbara snaps and says, "Good Christian people don't talk about such horrible things." Gwen argues back. The fight heats up, so Kenneth steps in and tells them to leave the office. That night, she sees her mum standing in the doorway, watching her. Gwen steps outside and sees Felix. When he starts running, she follows him. Right then, Finney wakes up by the sound of the phone ringing. He wakes Ernesto too and tells him to stay with Gwen while he goes to answer the call. And Gwen sees Finney and Ernesto from a distance, but keeps walking after Felix. On the phone, Finney hears the grabber's voice, but he doesn't see the grabber's ghost near the booth. The grabber tells him that he's come back for revenge, since Finney is the reason the grabber killed his own brother. Meanwhile, Ernesto reaches the girls' dorm and finds Gwen's bed empty. So he comes out and runs, shouting Gwen's name loudly. When the staff heard, they asked why you were making noise, so he tells them that Gwen was not in the girls' dorm. While following Felix's ghost, Gwen came into an empty mess hall. There she sees light coming from inside and follows it into the kitchen, where the ovens suddenly open, making a loud noise, which the staff and Ernesto hear and run toward the mess hall. Right then, from the dark corner, the grabber appears and attacks her with an axe. She fights back as much as she can, but then he uses the axe to pin her down and begins choking her. Just then, the staff and Ernesto came into the kitchen and find Gwen on the floor, struggling to breathe, but none of them can see the grabber. Suddenly, Gwen's body is thrown against the wall. Barbara screams, and Finney hears it, so he runs toward the mess hall. Inside, Gwen is in the mid-air and being pushed toward the ovens. Ernesto grabs her legs just in time, but when the staff try to help, things start flying off the shelves and attacking them. Mustang dodges them and joins Ernesto to pull Gwen back. The moment Finney came in, the grabber releases Gwen. She collapses while the grabber vanishes into the darkness. After that, everyone gathers in the chapel, where Gwen tells them about the boys she's seen in her dreams. Armando recognizes them and says that he never stopped searching for them. He then shows them a photo of the staff. Hope is in the picture, and Finney also spots the grabber among the staff members. Armando, shocked, says he used to work at the camp as a maintenance guy, and people called him Wild Bill Hickok because he wore a belt like a gunslinger. Then Gwen realizes that letter she saw in her dream, WBH, match with Wild Bill Hickok. Armando says strange things began happening at the camp 4 years ago, and Finney explains that's the same year he killed the grabber. Then Gwen guesses that the grabber gets stronger by feeding on his victim's fear, so they need to find the boys' bodies to set their souls free. She also realizes the police never searched the lake at the time because it was frozen. So they decides to go to the lake in the morning. In the morning, they search the frozen lake all day, but finds nothing and return camp. That evening, Finney and Ernesto tell Gwen they'll take turns watching over her while she sleeps. So Gwen falls asleep and dreams of a paperboy named Billy delivering newspapers in town. The grabber abducts him in a black van, and Billy was his first victim after leaving the camp. Hope sees this dream and suddenly recognizes the kidnapper as Wild Bill. Then she sees Hope leave the bed. Soon after, they reach the grabber's house, where Hope finds a boy locked in the basement. She tries to run for help, but the grabber catches her and pulls her into his black van. Right then, the ghostly grabber appears and signals Gwen to get in, and she does. The van stops at Gwen's own house. There she's forced to watch her mother Hope's body hanging in the garage. It wasn't suicide. Seeing this, Gwen cries while her father, Terrence, finds his wife's body and breaks down in grief. After that, the grabber pulls out his axe and Gwen starts running in panic. She opens a door and came inside the grabber's basement. The black phone rings, and when she answers, it's Felix says her to hide. Gwen runs to the bathroom and finds a hole that leads to another door. She pounds on it, but it won't open. The grabber catches up and slashes her arm with the axe. The wound causes her to bleed in the real world as well. Ernesto sees Gwen bleeding and yells for help, but they can't wake her. In the dream, Felix opens the door and Gwen escapes. He shuts the door behind her and she runs toward the lake. There she sees Armando still searching, and finally finds Felix's body under the ice and starts trying to break it open. Suddenly, a payphone appears beside Gwen and rings. When she answers it, the grabber tells her he must protect himself from anyone who tries to take away his power. Right then, the grabber appears behind Armando and begins smashing the ice too. Gwen tries to help, but she's stuck in booth. The ice breaks, and Armando falls into the freezing lake. When he tries to get out, the grabber stomps his head and pushes him back under, while Gwen keeps punching the booth door, so in the real world, she punches Finney. Then the grabber smashes the booth's glass, grabs the phone cord, and starts choking Gwen with it. He throws her around so hard that her real body also starts spinning wildly on the bed. Blood splatters everywhere before the boys manage to pin her down. Mustang throws cold water on her face, but she still won't wake up. So everyone keeps yelling for her to fight back, while Gwen hears her friends' voices through the phone, and the booth explodes, knocking the grabber away. Now Gwen realizes she has power here too. Then she headbutts the grabber and finally wakes up. After that, everyone rushes to the lake and pulls Armando out of the water. Then he says he found Felix's body, and the group decides they'll return in the morning to search the other two. Back at camp, they're shocked to see Terrence arrive driving the snowplow. Finney wants to leave, but Gwen refuses. She wants to stay and finish what they started. The next morning, they searches all day but can't find the other two boys. That night, Gwen falls asleep and dreams of the grabber skating on the ice. She tries to run but slips and falls into water. At the same time, the grabber attacks Kenneth with an axe and drags him across the lake. And that injury happens to Kenneth in real life too. Then Kenneth's body hits Barbara, knocking her down so hard that her face slams into the ice. Meanwhile, underwater, Gwen sees some barrels. She kicks them aside and finally finds the bodies of the last two boys inside them. Just then, the grabber smashes the ice around the hole, and the rescue cable fall into the water too. Then he goes after Finney, jumps over the horse carriage, wraps his belt around Finney's neck, and starts choking him. Meanwhile, Terrence dives into the water and helps Gwen pull the barrels up to the surface, while Finney manages to shove the grabber away. Right then, Gwen begins to pray, and that finally frees the souls of the boys. After that, the bodies rise from the ice and grab the grabber's ankle, making him fall. Their souls stand in his way, and Gwen hits him in the head with an axe, then rips off his mask. The grabber panics. Finney appears and slams his head on the ice over and over. Then Gwen cuts off the grabber's leg to free him from a skeleton's grip, and they throw his body into the lake. The three boys push him down underwater, making sure he finally dies for real. When the dream ends and Gwen wakes up, she kisses Ernesto. Afterward, Armando calls the boys' families to let them know their bodies have been found. While leaving, Gwen hears the payphone ring. She answers and hears her mother's voice, telling her she did a good job saving the kids. Hope also tells her she loves both her children. Then the line goes quiet. Gwen shares the message with Finney, and then she and her brother leave the camp with their dad.